Hello everybody, welcome to the top 5 builds which are not Witcher sets. Starting off first with this pretty strong, I would say, Vitality build, which is really high Vitality, thanks to the Toussaint Knight's Tourney armor, which is actually one of the best armors in the game except the Witcher sets, because it requires level 100, a huge boost in heavy armor and 545 protection armor. It has 500 plus vitality, and you can see you have a pretty high resistance to piercing damage and so on. I put also resistance to elemental damage here just to get more protection. And yeah, so all of the armor gives us extra vitality. We are using on the swords the Severance increase the will just to have a higher chance of like hitting enemies of longer ranges. We're using as usual the Echidna decoction, Echimera decoction, Troll decoction, and the Water Hack decoction. Level these is increased when vitality is at maximum, so we're way higher damage, which is maybe a bit more interesting in this build. We are focusing only on strong attacks. I mean, we can also use the wheel, we can also include that as well. Then we're focusing on a lot on alchemy just to get this extra vitality boost. We could also do here more vitality. It really depends what the preference are. I mean, you have an attack power of 15%, or we have a vitality of 225, which is not too bad. Yeah, we have in the typical 3, which we always use. That's just for increased toxicity, which is I would recommend always to use. And then I mostly go for protective coating just to get this protection, which is actually quite strong. In this case we use Hunter Instinct, which I'm not sure if it worked in the patches because it always was kind of like buggy, but we just included to get the vitality by plus 900%, plus 900. We have Killing Spree, so we're having additional increase in critical hit. This time it's pretty important, which is different than the other ones. We are using the Beer Skull techniques because it's a heavy armor set, and we're having plus 5% vitality for each piece of set, and we're having strong attack damage by 5%, and the typical things are mostly focus and metabolic control, which is a bit interesting this time. We could use Euphoria, which works, or we could also use adrenaline point thing, like the mutated skin for the protection. So let's test it out actually how the protection is. So when we go here, let's get some Quen first of all here, and so the damage would be probably pretty normal because it doesn't boost up so far and it's not Euphoria, but we're focusing now on vitality. So now damage is less than we would use with Euphoria. With Euphoria would be way stronger. But it's still not too bad. We're still getting the damages. We're still dead. Okay, so did we put the calling probably? So let's see how much damage we're taking. So as you can see, we don't really have any damage, which is pretty nice. And so long ranges, less damage. So like the thing is, you don't really need Quen actually, because you just survive so much. So that's just a good vitality strong build, which is pretty easy to go, and I think if you want to have a different set than the Witcher sets, great thing, good range, strong attack. I'm not mostly the big fan of the strong attacks, just because it always takes a bit time to personal control the long thing. But yeah, there was build number 1. So coming to build number 2, which is the Hengaden build. Which there's actually 2 versions of it, so I think I will just go over both versions to make it a bit more interesting. So I mean, it's the top 5 with included different versions of the build. So this one actually, where you can see here with the Hengaden build, which is kind of focusing on vitality regen. So because of the armor sets, when you have 6 of the 6 relics. There's a killing opponents restores vitality. The amount of vitality restored equals 1% of the maximum vitality for each element of the set 1. Warren, currently that amount is 6%. We are using increased range of world just because it's more fun to have a longer range with the weapons, especially if it's strong attack and the will. And we're using the similar, don't want to go into too much detail. We are using Hangman again, just because it's the easiest way to show. What is interesting here, we're using this time Euphoria. The next build, like the other version of it, is the Bloodbath. So focusing on Euphoria, we're rushing a bit through. We're having a strong attack build. We're obviously using fleet-footed for dodging. It's not 100% necessary. You can also change it with different things like these two, or deadly precision, which if you want to. But here we are using our 3 recommended standard ones. We're having protective coating. We're having the enduring pain, increase maximum vitality by 30% when toxicity exceeds the safe threshold, which is actually quite beneficial for this build. Killing spree and hunter instinct. I'm using that just to have like a higher vitality because of the mutagens. We are using here this time fast belts. Like, you can focus both. You can either do a heavy armor increase maximum vitality by 5%, or we're focusing on strong attack damage, which I don't really like that much because you need to press and hold the button, and there's time when an enemy can hit you. For me, it's always better to have like a critical hit damage and fast attack damage, which is just, I think it's just preference. Then we're using Euphoria. And yeah, let's jump into the build. So we're having a vitality of 8,000, and the focus on this build is saving the vitality. So we're using here Troll Decoction, Echinite Decoction, Echimara Decoction, and the Water Hack Decoction. It's a bit easier. So this time here, going for here. Okay, so let's see when we enter a fight because of Euphoria. We're having 8,000, vitality is by 10,000. And if we would do the spin, which probably gives like a pretty good damage, and as you can see here, we already restore the vitality automatically. So we're having 12,000 DPS, vitality is increased, damage will increase pretty exponentially because the vitality bonus, and for example each vitality we're gaining, the more damage we can do. One thing is, let's say I will get hit myself. Okay, so we have that. Now I'm killing some enemies, and let's see how fast we are gaining our things back. So pretty fast actually. We're having actually quite high damage. Going here, we have 14,000 vitality, so it boosts up pretty fast. When we're having our Quen here, for example, we always get like a really high amount of damage back. So especially, for example, if you're doing boss fights or something, I think that's also a really good way. So, and let's go for the win. And here, as you can see, I think it also looks pretty cool. There would also be another version where you could use the caretaker weapon, which also would be pretty interesting. So I'm getting here. Yeah, so I think pretty nice build, pretty strong build, and also especially because you have the wheel, you're getting so much vitality restored. Actually, I don't feel like you can lag in that. So it's kind of like a vitality restored build. I mean, you can make it way higher with the restored vitality, which is not always effective in terms of damage and so on. So in my case, that's my preference. I mean, we didn't check out how much it was, but I think, yeah, it's pretty substantial amount. So version number 2 looks like that. In this build we have the same things, everything, but we're using for this one Quen, just to have a way higher protection, and just to don't get any hits at all. We're having this time Adrenaline Rush because we called it the Red Devil. Fast attacks, Resolve always in there, and Razor Focus. Then we're using Quen. We don't need the active shield, so I don't equip it. We don't even need more fast attacks, so I'm focusing on that. We're having protective coding, and the typical 3 things. We're having Cat's cool techniques, and yeah, pretty simple. let's jump into the build so we don't. So we are being super fast in this build, and it's just like an extra thing. We will spawn one-handed, let's say 20 of them again. We having our decoction, which we actually could change in this one. So for example, we are using damage deal to foes regenerates vitality, which is pretty effective. Performing actions that consume stamina regenerates vitality. That's not can also have something with a higher damage. First of all, we're using Hanged Man. There's increased critical hit chance, what could be possible to use. We could also have until reach a maximum shot. That would also be possible to use, for example, to have a generally higher damage at all. We're using Troll Decoction again, and yeah, I think we're ready to go with an additional Succubus Decoction. So for example, Succubus Decoction, Troll Decoction, Echimera Decoction, Waterhead Decoction. Looking at our damage, and it's already pretty high. We have an insanely high sign intensity for the first 30 seconds. So I think so means we are burning like a rat. We are feeling our vitality, and yeah, we're just crushing it. We look, in my opinion, we look pretty cool. And yeah, we're easily getting the damage, restoring our vitality pretty easily, having a bit of a higher Quen sign intensity. And going here, yeah, pretty high sign intensity, pretty high vitality, and pretty high strong attack. So this wears off, which is sadly the case after the 30 seconds, and then we're having a pretty low sign intensity. So this build is pretty good if you want to have really fast damage in a really short period of time. And the other thing is it looks pretty cool with the Red Devil thing. That's what I call it, the Red Devil. So yeah, and this time we just need to finish this pretty off. Going here. I mean, it's still fine afterwards. But in my opinion, the nice thing about this mutagen is that it just looks super fancy, especially with the red build. So coming to the next build, which is the Undvik set, which is actually, in terms of like points, like it just looks probably one of the best armor sets in the game. You can see, I mean, look at this, like the detail in the armor, it's amazing. So it's probably definitely one of my favorite sets. What is about this interesting? We are focusing in this one on a Frost Art build and attack build. So it's not the strongest build, but I think it's a pretty nice and fun build, which brings a bit of flexibility and change in the game. Focusing on here on fast attacks. I wanted to test actually Flood of Anger, which so increasing sign intensity by 300%, unlocking all bonuses, which I didn't really use often, but I wanted to try it out for this build. We're having here all equipped the art signs, our typical typical 3 alchemies, which are always necessary. We're using medium armor, and we're having increased adrenaline generation by 5%. Using science now generates adrenaline points, and yeah, the typical things, and using piercing cold. For the set, we are using treated as medium armor, so we have the benefit of it to faster sign intensity, higher sign intensity, and faster generation of endurance and adrenaline. We having 2 sports, which are both pretty strong in terms of frost damage and sign art intensity, and here we are in frost damage. So also the chance to freeze as soul sword would also be possible. We could also use the guess heft. So here we have a 30% chance of sign intensity. I mean, in this one I used the wheel, for example, which is both actually fine. For here we are equipping it with art to make it stronger, the sign intensity. Yeah, We have different potion decoctions. So we have the Echidna decoction because they're consuming stamina, regenerates vitality. And we have in each sign cast increased stamina regeneration for the remainder of the fight, which is really important because I mean we don't have a Griffin set, and it accelerates stamina regeneration, and we are using the Maribor for the generation of adrenaline points. Looking at the stats here, Intensity isn't as high, but yeah, let's kick it off and see how strong the enemies are. And this one we're just doing 10, so as I said, it's probably not the strongest build. We are doing Economic Decoction, Annihilation Decoction, Superior Tony, and the Maribor. So we are easy to focus. So we're getting the frost damage, which is actually kind of like I would say a pretty nice build. I mean, there's a lot of things you can change. So as you can see, the generation is actually pretty fast, which is good for like an attack build. As you can, we get now into the fight. Sanitary is not high, but we have the thing of having piercing cold, where the people are being slower, and I think it's kind of like a fun build. I mean, it looks nice. I think it kind of like fits because Undvik, you know, like you have a Skellige set, so it's pretty cold. So we have this piercing set, which in my opinion fits perfectly, getting this damage, and I think it's a pretty durable set. So pretty short part of this set. It's nothing too special. I think it's more like a fun and a nice set to have, the difference to not using the Witcher armors. Yep. So coming to one of my favorite builds as well, or one of my favorite armor sets, which is a bit, well, it's a bit cloudy here in Skellige, but one of my favorite armors, which I played for a long time, is the Ofieri set, especially in the combination with the blade, which wait, I'm just putting on here again. Yep, putting on here again. So looking at that, it looks amazing in my opinion. The blade, it is also pretty strong, and it fits perfect to set. I mean, it's a perfect thing. This set or this build is mainly focusing on attacks. So we have here the Ofieri Saber with an increased range of wheel, same with the Erendite, the two, I would say, like the strongest silver sword in the game, which is definitely beneficial for this build. For here, the Ofieri scale, it's already a light armor, so there was no point to include anything else on it, so I just gave it 30% chance of returning a portion of damage received to the attacker, nothing too special. Because we're not using any signs, so it doesn't really make any sense. With all of the other sets having Quen sign intensity on the highest, we're using a Chimera decoction to demo deal to the foes regenerate vitality. We could also use it for the stamina, which I don't really think it's too important because it's a fast attack, so we earn enough vitality back from the Chimera decoction. We're using the Succubus decoction to attack power growth over the course of the fight, because we are also using Euphoria. We had a water hack decoction. We're using troll decoction just to don't get too poisoned or toxicity levels. Getting to the character, we having here all 4 things of fast attack, bit of strong attack, but we don't need that. There was a mistake. We can use that, we don't need to, or we can also use deadly precision. That's just for if you don't getting hit, so while dodging, which I kind of like. Typical things, protect coating for strength, for more protection, cat school techniques, and we're using focus, so adrenaline points increase both weapon damage and sight intensity, and we're using Euphoria, which is the best, especially for Quen and attack builds. So yeah, sets are focusing on attacks, and let's see. So good being here, going down, we will use succubus decoction, water hack decoction, and Ikimara decoction. I think if I would put another thing on it, it wouldn't really make sense. I mean, I couldn't pull the troll decoction, so we gain a bit more. So we have a really high toxicity, so 94%, which increases our sign intensity and our attacks. So yeah, we put on the swords the oil, so we having a better protection on it. Yeah, and here we now, and let's do the wheel. So it should be a pretty strong damage. We don't want to get hit, so we have a way higher chance of getting a way higher damage, as you can see here already. We're getting a higher damage already, so it kind of boosts a bit up. Armor's not too bad. And it's a pretty easy build. Oh, it actually takes quite a high damage. Yeah, I mean, it's a light armor, so it doesn't really have a lot of protection. That's the reason we also use the Quen, so it just saves us a bit from the damage we take. Same with the protective coat. We can also, for example, let's say we are using superior. Oh, yeah. And we're doing a strong. Thanks, controller, for not. Yeah, for not using weapon. So, actually, pretty nice build. Pretty strong as well. Especially with the best thing you can do. Having a high damage, and yeah. So fight is still there, and we have a high sun intensity, high silver sword, and it still looks great in my opinion. So coming to a pretty interesting build in my opinion. This one is my samurai build, fast attack samurai bleeding build. So this one is focusing mostly on fast attacks and bleed, as I said. So we have an increased range of the wheel on both swords. We're using the fitting ones. As you can see here, you have a chance to cause bleeding. And here you also have a chance to cause bleeding. So we want to take advantage out of that and also put that together. Then we're using the fitting armor set, which is not super strong, but it looks cool in my opinion. It is have a really decrease in armor, but yeah, nothing we can do about that. That's the reason we're having Quen sign intensity, to just give us a bit more protection so we don't die too fast. Using all 4 fast attacks, especially the bleeding, makes sense in this build because it is a bleeding build. Then using the typical things here, no signs, which wouldn't make any sense, and pretty high in alchemy because we're using Euphoria, because we need the higher strength, especially in this build, and we need the more alchemy, which is good for the potions, and also we need protect coating. This one is also focusing on critical hits. So we are having here 2 alchemies to focus on critical hits, which is also, in my opinion, pretty interesting. In this one is we're using tissue transmutation because we get gaining 900 vitality for every decoction we are using. So because this one is not that strong in terms of protection and vitality, this one just wants to keep it a bit stronger. Using cat school techniques and the typical 2. And Euphoria, as I said. So let's jump into the build. Me having the inventory, not a high sun intensity, silver sword. Yeah. So as I said, if I'm using, we are now here on 6,900 vitality. Activating troll decoction, ignite decoction, water hack decoction for a Karakan decoction for attacks. Now we're going in the inventory and we have a 10,549 vitality with a toxicity of 94, which is pretty high. So yeah, we're already boosting our sign intensity because of the toxicity, and getting into the fight. We're doing it a bit easier this time, just doing 10. So having our Quen, which is really important, just that we're surviving. So yes, in this one, let's go here. Having still a pretty high damage, especially in a fast attack. Looking at the stacks, and we are pretty strong. High vitality, silent tendency is getting quite high, and good protection in Quen. Armor is, yeah, it's okay. And we have a silver sword. Looking here, we do a really good damage. Pretty fast build. Looks pretty cool. We are losing. Oh, because the bleeding. Even this bleeding effect. Yeah, so as I said, not the strongest build in terms of protection. So we definitely need to keep that in mind. But I think fun thing, and I mean the game is anyways easy, so making it a bit more challenging. Still having a strong build. So adrenaline points are pretty higher, but we're having not a high vitality. That's the reason we needed it, but our sword is getting higher. So, come here, give it a hit, and done. Yep. So, that was all my top 5 builds, which are not the Witcher sets, which I kind of like to play, which are interesting, not crazy strong. I mean, the best ones you can do are with your Witcher sets. I think if you want to have a bit of change and different armor sets, just in terms of visual effects, yeah, I think you're good to go with these sets. Thanks for watching this video, and see you guys in my next Witcher build.